Good evening. And there's a picture of the Sven Library at William and Mary. I was there this week to do a taping of video history, and we'll get into that. Some other pictures. That's an ice picture along near Fredericksburg. Look how it looks like a skating rink from the storm. That's Williamsburg Inn. I stayed in the Sparks Hotel, but I have stayed there before. And then a couple pictures in Minneapolis. That's the James the George Floyd's memorial from 2020, and then there's downtown, and there's the Churchill Apartments where I used to live back from 1997 to 2003. I had a very interesting time living in Minneapolis for 6 years, and so I have a certain perspective on the problems in Minneapolis. Pardon the shirt, it didn't button came loose, but um, so a couple things I want to talk about specifically about what's been going on there. One of the most important is people, content creators, and journalists, and sometimes the line between them gets blurred, being accused of participating in crimes that they're filming, or being warned, or being approached. And we all heard about Don Lemon, and I think, you know, um, I guess the New York Post had an article, in fact, that claims he had talked to some of the protesters before he went into the church to film it. Um, and then Ford Fisher of News to Share, NEWS, the number two share, had something on X about being scolded by ICE for following them in a car. But he's a journalist today on X. You can look all that up. Um, I have my reaction to this. Because I I film protests sometimes. I haven't recently, but I used to a lot. And I sort of incidentally did in front of the Kennedy Center about a week ago, Thursday night, when I went to a concert, and the Millennium movie was premiering at the Kennedy Center, and they had extreme security, and um, the van, the courtesy van taking us to from Foggy Bottom to the Kennedy wasn't running because of the police presence and everything, and I filmed some protesters from inside the taxi. So yeah. Um, And some people did go to the concert, but had to walk back in the cold. We weren't told about this at all. But generally, if I think if you've had a conversation or contact with somebody that tells you that there's going to be a crime, there's going to be unlawful activity, and you know ahead of time, and then you go to film it, you probably can get in trouble. And the other thing that strikes me as very important in this, it might matter what kind of a journalist you are. If you have press credentials, there's probably the way you have to behave. If you do have press credentials, there are probably rules that companies, employers have for how you cover it. I'm sure CNN and NBC and CBS and so forth, particularly CBS now, all have their rules on how you can cover it. Um, if you're an independent journalist which Don Lemon is now, he got fired from CNN some time back. Um, um, I used to admire. He said a lot of good things. He would tell young black men to pull up your pants and to behave. Just he had some stern advice, but then he got in trouble with other things and said, I actually kind of enjoyed it most of the time. Um, but how he behaved with respect to the church protest in Minneapolis seems very questionable. And if you were a journalist who can account for the fact that you make a living at journalism and you actually do reporting and you actually have a, you know, a a formal company, an LLC organization for yourself, and can produce accounting to show you do this for a living, that you're a professional at it, and maybe that makes a difference. I wouldn't be able to do that if I were to ever participate in something like that. So I would not even intentionally follow somebody, because I thought something was going to happen. I wouldn't think I could get away with that um, if I were trying to do it. But and Ford Fisher had a lot to say about the First Amendment on X, and for journalists can do this, and he always insists that you can film the police, which you can if you happen upon it and find it and didn't know about it before. Yes, you can. From a safe distance, you can't interfere, and sometimes you can't either be involved with something that's classified, which is something, of course, the government is trying to claim, and they're trying to claim that some of the illegal community is a national security threat. They're trying to claim that. Um, a couple of the other cases recently, the Renee Goods being shot. The general information, if you check Copilot, the general thread of information is that it doesn't look like she was involved in anything. She was an activist, but it didn't look like she was intentionally planning to do anything that day. She and White. Um, it doesn't look they were a little bit supercilious but they weren't planning to do anything, according to reputable sources. So the legal implications for the shooting seem to be serious, maybe. And then the Jeffrey Preddy case, according to Copilot, there is information that he was, even though he has a very good record as a citizen, as a person, that he was involved in some, um, activism before. Oh, that was one other thing. The ICE or the government did in a post, in a warning that posted, claimed that Ford Fisher, post on X, claimed that what journalists were doing was not journalism but was activism. And that's the other question we always come up with. Um, if you're standing by, either standing behind and just reporting and filming it to get views, but you're not participating, then you're sort of unfairly taking advantage of the system. A lot of people, particularly in the left, feel that it's wrong, feel they have a right to conscript you into their cause and demand that you join them no matter what. It's join or die. And that's another issue for me is, my speech, I want my speech to be my own, not part of some group. But that's a big, big issue. Um, so um, that is what's going on generally in Minneapolis. This is the Powderhorn. This is the Powderhorn area right here. It's mostly east of I-35W. Downtown is up there, and it's mostly south of Lake Street. And over here is a real groovy area, Lake and Hennepin and so forth, that I like, Bryant Lake Bowl and so forth. But this is the Powderhorn area, is more minority. A lot of people live here. There are stories about a scandal with child care and the Somali community. There does seem to have been a major scandal and everything. It does seem to me, from generally following things, that most of the people they're trying to apprehend either really are here illegally, but or may have arrest records. So they are going after people that they claim or there shouldn't be here legally. And most of it seems to be legitimate. And then other people who don't look like I do get caught and they're in the wrong place at the wrong time, get caught up and get dragged into the scene and get pulled, get detained also if you're not carrying, your passport with you or something, identity with you. So it is dangerous, but most of the activity really seems to be legally legitimate to me. And yes, you don't have a right to be in the country illegally and forever. It's the rules can change. You might have gotten grace before. A lot of things are the world's getting a lot stricter about a lot of things, and in fact, including seniors, and that's something else I've talked about. But you don't necessarily have the right to do that. Um, so that was one. That was one thing. Um, then, uh, um, just to talk about this past Wednesday, a um, I did an oral history interview in these um, for the William and Mary Oral History Project about my expulsion from college in the fall of 1961, of course, which is what my first book, starts with in chapter one, right there. Um, so this picture. So I probably talked for about 2.5 hours, and there should be a video or probably a series of videos, and one way or another, I'll have pieces of this up on YouTube in my playlist within a reasonable amount of time. I think when you drive there, you have to. There's actually you drive down. I was staying up here off of Richmond Road. You come down, swing in front of the Wren Building, and come over here. And there's no on Landrum Avenue. There's no sign telling you there's Landrum. You said you actually have to know, and the library is right here in the middle. And you park. I had to park in the back, and they had to get me a pass and everything, and went in and did the interview in the library. It's a very large library inside. Very interesting place to study. It'd be very interesting to go to school there now. The Brown Hall was up here, is where I was, and in the night that day after Thanksgiving, I got called into the dean's office that night, which I talk about in the book, and I talked in detail about in the interview. I walked out here and then went down to the Wren Building, and which is here, and then you have all the other buildings and the sunken garden. Well, the Wren Building's here. You have the sunken gardens and many buildings, and the library is somewhat behind all of that. Uh, somewhat behind all of that, back further more deeply into the campus. So that's what I was doing this week. Drove down there Tuesday, drove back yesterday. Really very interesting 3 days. With the winter, kind of stressful dealing with the cold weather. It was kind of an unusual outing for me, but well, I'm looking forward to seeing the tapes of the interview, and being able to share them, and um, and also being able to promote my short film, which I think I have reason to believe there's some interest in it. So that's what I have today. But again, the biggest thing just to warn people about, if you are filming protests, um, if you happen to see something criminal going on and seeing people being arrested, if you actually happen to see violence going on, or particularly vandalism going on, particularly that, and if make sure if don't get involved in it if somebody told you about it beforehand, or if you stumble upon it, that's probably okay. But if you knew about it beforehand, particularly if you're a more independent journalist, it's probably very dangerous to get involved in reporting it, just for your own visibility as a speaker. That's what I honestly think. And some of these other cases, these two people that have been shot. I'm not a lawyer, and I like Dr. Todd Ronday. I follow him a lot. He was a good source of analysis on all these cases, but the legal implications in both cases are very unclear as to what would happen to the officers who shot them. I'm not going to really speculate very much, but um, it seems as though maybe even it seems that what Creddy was doing up to the point that maybe he was perfectly legal. He tried to protect someone from an officer that might have been it might be a felony to interfere with an arrest, to interfere with an operation, but you might feel that the policeman is doing something, or the officer is doing something illegal, then it's a tremendous moral problem. So it's very unclear to me what's going to happen. And again, in the other case, it seems like they really weren't doing anything. So you know, you want to follow some of the lawyer sites to see exactly what legally is going to happen. It's just very unclear right now. So that's what I have today, and talk to you more about what's happening with the fourth book. Wrote right out with the fourth book soon. Thanks.